Let me start with a phrase which I think summarizes the way we are thinking and the way I believe we should move. Good food for all for today and tomorrow. So good food for all for today and tomorrow. Why? Because the agricultural sector and the agri-food system, and I am very clear that it's the agri-food system, is not just the food system, because agriculture produces both food and non-food, which is used to feed people. That's the right to food, and that's the definition of food security. So the agri-food system has the obligation to provide the right to food. And that's the bigger objective of what we are trying to achieve. But we can do that today, but if we are not careful, we won't be able to do that tomorrow. And that's where the sustainability part comes, and it's so important. Because if we are not careful on how we produce and how we use our environment, our natural resources, we won't be able even to accomplish that goal today. Even today, we are not able yet to accomplish the goal of providing the right to food to everybody. Now, what is the problem? The problem is that today, if we look at climate financing, a little bit more than 3% is coming to the agri-food systems. And if I focus on the smallholders, only a little bit more than 1%. And that is completely inconsistent with the logic of good food for all for today and tomorrow. Because the sector, there are two sectors that will affect climate: energy and the agri-food systems. The energy sector will resolve itself with the private sector. But the agri-food system is a lot more complex. And it's the sector where we can gain enormous efficiency by investing in transforming this sector. We can gain efficiencies, and we can also use the resources more properly. Now, what is the situation today? If I look at the right good food for all for today, we have 735 million people chronically undernourished today. 2.4 billion people that don't have access to adequate food today. And 3.1 billion people that don't have access to healthy diets today. That's the good part, the good food for all. So that is the challenge that we have today. So we have to be very careful not putting more burden to the producers today, because they won't be able to accomplish this even by 2030 SDG 2s. And if we look at it tomorrow, we know that the agri-food systems creates emissions, greenhouse gas emissions around 30%. We know that it will affect the threatened species. 80% of them are at risk because of the agri-food system. We know it will affect water. 70% of the fresh water withdrawals come from the agri-food system. And we also know that 80% of the pollution in the sea is because of what happens in the land. And that's where we need to increase efficiencies. That's the second part that is so important. So the point is, what are the actions that we need to do? At FAO, we have developed the roadmap to SDG 2 and 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's exactly the goal of it. It's trying to bring all the knowledge that we have today in 10 domains, 2 cross-cutting, policies and data, but 8 sectoral domains on what we have known and how we can improve those efficiencies so that we can achieve this good food for all for today and tomorrow. And that's where we need to change the vision of the agri-food system. We talk a lot today of the bad things coming from agriculture. And it's the opposite. Agriculture provides the right to food. Remember, during COVID-19, during the war in Ukraine, the agri-food system delivered at the end of the line. Yes, prices went up, but they deliver, and you had all of food. And we cannot go against that. We have to support that, but we have to be careful, because we need to comply this for tomorrow. And that's the important thing of changing the logic of climate financing. So yes, it's very important to understand that this agri-food system is living under risk and uncertainties, completely. It's one of the most complex sectors. It's also one of the most distorted sectors in the world. That's where the repurposing agenda will come, that was mentioned by Sahawati. But the repurposing agenda will only work for developed countries because of the magnitudes. It won't work for developing countries because the magnitudes are too small. So the repurposing will be a lot more difficult and impact will be a lot lower. So we need to understand that Europe is not isolated in the world. Europe is part of the world. And the climate problem is a global problem. It's not a problem of one country or one region. So if one country or one region does something, doesn't resolve the problem. We need to coordinate and we need to create some convergence in the world. That's why bringing the transformation of the agri-food system with the climate negotiations is so important today. And what happened in COP28 was one first step. But we need to keep pushing that so that we arrive to a COP29 and COP30 where really action is happening and when we really attract climate financing to this sector, because it has a huge goal to accomplish. And one of the efforts we have been doing in the last 2 years is to define the true cost of food. And that is essential because there are many publications that came out, all of them different methodologies, different ways of doing it. So this State of Food and Agriculture of FAO of 2023 produced the first global figure of the true cost of food, which shows that the costs which are hidden, which we are not measuring, especially for developed countries, the most important ones are the health and environmental. For developing countries is socioeconomic and environmental, and then health. But what this means, this is a mirror to what you are saying, no? So if you know what is the real cost of environment damage or the real cost of health damage because of overconsumption of goods which are not healthy, then you can start looking at what will be the change of the improvement of that. And then we can see how we can provide incentives to achieve that. And that's where the repurposing agenda should be looking at. What I should provide incentives so that I can change these hidden costs that are creating a negative effect over nature. No? And in terms of the carbon market, there is a lot of work that is being done on that, and as my colleague said. But remember, it's pretty complex to certify that there is capture of carbon, especially in agriculture. And that requires technologies. There is a lot of exploration on sensors in land to be able to capture that by management of soils. There is the same in terms of forestry, of course. But it's evolving, and the market is starting to grow. So yes, I see a big potential for that market, but we need to bring a lot of technology attached to it to be able to trace it properly. I think just observing what happened in COVID-19, which many of us have forgotten, and see how the agri-food system reacted and responded, give me a lot of optimism. But I think it's also important to understand that we need convergence, and we need to put a lot of work on trying to create convergence so that we can create this system that works for good food for all for today and tomorrow. I think that change is essential for this optimism to be able to continue in the future, and we need to act. You know, creating innovation is great, but that doesn't mean that we have to push all innovations that happen. It means that we have to be careful, and we have to look at food safety also and keep the balance. We regulate because markets are not operating in perfect competition, and that's why regulation comes up. So we need to be very careful and have the balance. That's what is important now.